Hello everyone and welcome to the final game of day 2 of the SuperUnited Rapid tournament currently being played in Croatia. It is Magnus Carlsen versus Viswanathan Anand, and I even have their head-to-head score in Rapid chess for those of you who are interested. So Magnus defeated Vishy 23 times, Vishy defeated Magnus 12 times, and 29 times they drew their games. So Magnus in the lead here, but who is in the lead in the tournament is definitely Vishy. If you remember, we've checked out the games yesterday. Vishy is leading the tournament, and he has a great day too. He started by defeating Ivan Šarić, and he drew against Fabiano Caruana. And Magnus got 2 losses in his first 2 games of day 2, and now, well, they both really want to win. If Anand wins, he pretty much is unstoppable in this tournament. He would have to lose like two in a row, which is not impossible. Magnus lost 2 in a row. But he would be very, very close to winning the tournament. And if Magnus wins, he's definitely back in the race. So now let's see what happened here. Magnus has the white pieces, and he opened with e4. We have c6. Anand goes for the Caro-Kann defense. We have d4, d5. And now, not the main knight to c3 or even the advanced variation with e5. Magnus goes for the exchange variation with e captures on d5. Anand captures, and now again not even the pawn of attack, bishop to d3 instead. We have knight to c6 by Anand, c3 defending the pawn here, and just pawn to e6. We have bishop to f4 by Magnus, and now bishop to d6, offering a trade of dark square bishops. And Magnus goes for it. Captures, and knight to f3, knight gt7, and both players just castle. So nothing spectacular here from white. You do have some nice pressure here on the king side, but nothing really happening there. So we have rook to e1, and now pawn to f6 by Anand. There are some other games that reach this position. Knight to g6 is a non-move, also g6 is a non-move, but pawn to f6 has never been played before, and it is now, as of move 10, that we have a completely new game. And not only that, pawn to f6 is the top move, or rather one of the top moves recommended by the engine. So Anand, of course, knows very much how to treat this position. You take away the g5 square from the knight, so you don't have to worry about any tricks like bishop h7, queen to h5, and also later on you will have support for executing any central breakthroughs with maybe pawn to e5. So okay, we have c4 by Magnus. Now, as the king's position has been weakened, he of course wants to open up this diagonal. Anand just trades, d captures, bishop captures, and now knight to f5. Now, of course, both the bishop and the queen are, defending the e6 pawn. We have pawn to d5, captures with check, and just king to h8. Nothing really happening here. Knight to c3. And bishop to d7. Anand just continues development with queen to b3. Now, sort of putting pressure on the b7 pawn, and Anand goes back queen to c7. Not just to defend the pawn, but also you know that rook is coming to d1, so you don't want your queen on d6. And that's exactly what Magnus plays. Rook a to d1, rook a to d8 to counter Magnus's rook on d1, and now pawn to h3, creating a little bit of a breathing room for the white king. Bishop to c8, opening up the d file for his rook, and also adding more defense to that b7 pawn, and queen to a3 by Magnus, putting pressure on this diagonal, but also with some ideas of sorry about the weird arrow, of knight to b5, putting pressure on the queen and the a7 pawn. So knight f to e7, attacking the bishop, and just knight to b5, attacking the queen. We have queen to b6, and here Magnus goes for it. Knight captures on a7. There are other moves you could consider here, like maybe knight coming to d6 is a move. Also, you could play bishop captures on c6, but Magnus plays knight captures on a7, and it's not easy to deal with this. There are definitely easy ways to go wrong here. For example, if the knight moves, then the knight on e7 is defended. But it's not much better if the queen captures. If queen captures, you will still capture, force the knight away, and then, of course, go for rook captures on e7. And always white should be a little bit better, as white is up a pawn. But Anand says, all right, you will be up a pawn, but it's going to be a doubled b pawn, so it's not going to be as impressive. He goes for knight captures on d5. Knight captures on c8, we have rook captures on c8, and now rook captures on d5. Rook to a8, you have to play this, so now The queen has to move, and you have to also defend the a2 pawn. So you have to play queen to b3, and here Anand very happily trades, captures, and goes rook to f7. Okay, Magnus is up a pawn, but it's a double b pawn, and I believe Anand would be very happy with a draw here to simply extend his lead in the tournament. We have rook to e4 by Magnus, king to g8, and now pawn to b4. Preparing pawn to b5, we have rook to d8, offering a rook trade, and Magnus obliges. We have rook captures, knight captures, and king to f1. Now Magnus wants to get his king up the board, and Anand, of course, does the same. King to f8, but for the moment, the king cannot cross the e-file. King to e2, rook to c7 now. We have king to d3, king to f7, and now knight to d4. Here, there are a couple of moves Anand could consider, like you could consider advancing those kingside pawns. You could go maybe rook c1, try and go behind the pawns. Anand decides to go for knight to c6, attacks the pawn and the knight on d4, and Magnus trades. We have knight captures, and now rook captures on c6. So now you will probably attack those pawns, and hopefully Magnus will not be able to do anything about that. Rook to c4. Of course, Anand cannot trade as Magnus is up a pawn. Doesn't matter if it's a double pawn. If it's a king and pawn endgame with no pieces, then it will be winning. Rook to d6 check, rook to d4, rook back to b6, and now rook to d7 with check. We have king g6. Of course, Anand needs to take care of the g7 pawn, and king to c4. We have rook to c6 with check, and now king to b3. We have pawn to b6 now, getting the pawn out of harm's way, and now rook to d2. Defending the back rank, we have rook to e6, and now just king to a4, trying to get over to the b6 pawn, and then maybe some rook to c2, then rook to c6, then you win the pawn, then maybe you make some advancements. So rook to e5, of course, stopping the king from advancing, and now pawn to f4. We have rook to e4, and now rook to f2. Defending the f4 pawn, we have pawn to h5, and now pawn to f5 with check. King to g5, and now king to b5. So how can Anand stop the b6 pawn from being lost? Well, at the moment he cannot. We have pawn to h4, king captures on b6, and now rook captures on b4 with check. That's why the rook is on f2. Now the b2 pawn is nicely defended. King to c5, and now rook to b3. So now Magnus is up a pawn, but it is no longer a double b pawn. Now it's just a clean b pawn. He's up a pawn. We have king to c4. Now comes rook to b8, and now, of course, the strongest move in chess ever played, pawn to b4. Rook to c8 with check. We have king to d5, rook to b8 attacking the pawn, but just king to c5. Rook to c8 with check. Of course, we all know what these are. These are spite checks. So we have king to d6, and now rook to b8 attacking the pawn. Now just rook to b2. We have king captures on f5, but now Magnus played pawn to b5. And he was in this position. On move 53, that Viswanathan Anand resigned the game and, well deserved the victory for Magnus Carlsen in the final round of the second day of the SuperUnited Rapid tournament in Croatia. So he starts with 2 losses, but then he finally gets a win against the leader of the tournament, Viswanathan Anand, who's been having pretty much a perfect tournament, and now Magnus kind of ruined it. But still, I believe that Anand will remain in the lead, but other games are still being played, so we'll have to see what happens. Now here, okay, it might seem like a bit of a premature resignation, but it's not. To give you an example, okay, let's say you start pushing those kingside pawns, you don't really have anything else. Let's say b6, g4, let's say captures, king to c7, you attack the rook, rook to h8, now trying to mix things up. Well, you could maybe advance the pawn. Rook to b3 is the safest way to go. Let's say rook h7 check, king to d6, now rook to b7, and now you just repeat and kick the rook away. King c6, rook b8, king to c7, the rook goes back or somewhere. Or even after rook to b8, you go b7 first. You don't even have to attack the rook. Now that's pretty much it. f5, king to c7, you have to sacrifice the rook for the passed pawn, otherwise it's going to become a queen. And yes, you do have 2 pawns, and the white king is far away, but there is just no way for the king or the pawns to cross the f3 and h3 squares, as they are defended twice by both the g-pawn and the rook. So there is no move here. The king cannot get across. The pawns cannot get across. There is absolutely nothing here. So of course, after b5, it's a good resignation, definitely not premature, and Magnus takes the win, the first win of the day. So other games, like I said, are still being played. We're gonna discuss. If you have any favorite, do use hashtag suggestion, and I will gladly cover it. And then we are going to discuss the standings after day 2 of the SuperUnited United Rapid Tournament. And here you can see just how sad Magnus was after losing the second game to Alireza. He lost the first game to Fabi. It was a really quick defeat, and he lost the second game to Alireza. Look at him here. He cannot believe it. How does one lose 2 games in a row? It's absolutely crushing for him, but now he gets at least a little bit something back. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Tough luck for Vishy, but still 3 more rounds. Anything can happen. They have to fight. I would like to thank James Eugene Cashman, John Austin, Not Complace, BulletChestThriller.com, and Paul Miller for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of this wonderful tournament until it finishes. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.